I'm Shirley Bean. I've lived in Charlotte for practically all my life, and I was involved with the Charlotte Senior Center right from the beginning. There was some controversy about it, and then we had one big meeting with the select board, and we discussed a lot of aspects of it that night. It came down to the point where the selectmen did not have the time to invest in preparing for it and doing the necessary groundwork. And so I got up and proposed to the selectmen that a group of us citizens would form a committee, and with their approval and their permission, we would go ahead and do the groundwork, which constituted part of the will. Now, when Walter Irish gave us the money, it was $500,000, there were stipulations to it. The money was to be used only for the building. It was not to purchase land. It was not to pay the architect. It wasn't to do the engineering. The town's select board didn't have any interest in purchasing any land. So he said, or they said, all right, go ahead. If you think you can do it, do it. The very next week, we had our first meeting of a group of citizens. We hadn't formed a board yet. It was just a group of citizens getting together, and we were really working on getting this thing going. The stipulations to the will, as I said, were it was to be strictly for the building. The first thing we had to do, well, let me see. It was form the background. We had to decide what type of a building we wanted, where we wanted it, which was very important, and then we had to hire an architect. And in the process, you had to buy the land, and when you get your land, you had to have your permits. That was another stipulation to the will. Before he would give you the money, you had to have the plans, the land, all the building permits in process. That constituted not only your town permits, it was all the state regulations. We had meetings every single week. Mary Ann Gattos came to the third meeting we had, volunteered to be coordinator of the building, of the process. I don't know, she calls it something else. I can't remember what it was, but she was the coordinator of it. And so we held our meetings at the Grange Hall. I made cookies for every meeting, coffee for every meeting, to make sure everybody was in good spirits. We kept track of everyone that attended the meetings, because you didn't get the same amount of people at every meeting. But there was a core of us that came at every single meeting. We got down to, first thing we decided was we had to hire an architect, because you had to have some idea of how big a building you were going to have before you decided what size the piece of land was. So we interviewed several different architects. And finally, we settled on the older type of person, Martin Harris. He was less expensive than some of the others, but we kind of liked his ideas. Then we decided, a group of us, that we needed to form a board of directors, a core. And among that group, there was Wally Gates, Trish Coleman, Phyllis Kroll, Bob Helferty, Ray and Pat Harwick, and myself. We were the core that formed the board of directors. Then we could go ahead, and Wally Gates said we needed to have a 501c, I think. And he decided he could do all the paperwork, which was a mountain of paperwork. So he took that project on himself. And then we called Frank Thornton, who was a retired lawyer from IBM. He was to form and draw up our corporation papers. So he drew up the corporation papers. And then Peter and Mary Ann Gatto said, we will take on the building permits, which was quite a task. And in the process, we told the people that we needed land. We had considered East Charlotte. There was some people that wanted it, of course, because there wasn't much going on in East Charlotte, and they figured it would bring a lot of attention to it. Then Happy Patrick said, I've got 10 acres of land I'll give you. Oh, we said, beautiful. It was right down here at the corner of Ferry Road and Route 7. And so we looked into the process, and the engineers, the Vermont engineer, says it's swampland. You've only got one place you can put it, and the process you're going to have to go through to get to that piece of property is probably undoable. You can't do it. So then Mr. LeBeff, Richard LeBeff, says, you can put it over on my piece of land. Oh, wonderful, that's just perfect. But it was going to be where he wanted it. It was going to have to be to his specifications, which probably weren't what Walter Irish had in mind. And we'd had to go through some more swampland. Then this piece of property that we're now sitting on, Wally Gates found out about it. It was going to go through bankruptcy, and the bank was going to repossess it. Consequently, we approached the people. They were going to move back to Hawaii. In fact, the mother and father had already gone back to Hawaii, and their son was living in the trailer. There was a double trailer here sitting on the property. And so he got in touch with them. Wally Gates got in touch with them, and they were willing to sell us it at a reasonable price. And so then that constituted another step in the process. The board of directors decided we needed to have a fundraising project to raise money to buy the land, because the town was not pushing buying the land. The town was just a little hesitant. So we figured we could raise the money and buy the land. So we started, and we've had Debbie Berg come in to act as chairman of it, because this was what she does. And we went ahead and we raised $235,000. Well, it not only purchased the land, it did a lot of the other things that we wanted to do for it. I'll talk about that later. But we got that done. And Peter and Mary Ann Gattos worked on getting all the permits, and we had to hire engineers. The town selectmen did consent to pay, but we had to pay them back. But they did give us the money to pay for the engineers. And we hired a company out of Middlebury. I can't remember the name, but it was a company out of Middlebury. They were very good. They came up, surveyed the property. We had a well on the property that we had tested. It was 50 gallons a minute or something, 50 gallons, unbelievable water supply. All good water, no sulfur. Um, then we started to advertise for somebody to do the work because we'd already hired the architect and he'd drawn up the plans. And we knew what the building was going to be like. So then we had to hire a contractor. So the selectmen said we had to put out a bid. Well, that was a process I have never gone through. This engineer company was very, very good to us. I don't think they overcharged us, but they came and surveyed the property. Then we had to have the state engineers come in. They had to approve it. There was a little concern about the back drainage ditch that separates our property from Skip Richardson's, and he has a pond out back there. And we thought we were all set to go, but then the state engineer came down and he says, well, that's going to drain into that pond. And so we all worried for about a day or a day and a half, and he came down and he says, no, we don't have to worry about it. So we all said a sigh of relief. We had drawn up all the plans, and then we had to meet with the trustees that held the money. You have to understand that the stipulation of the will was we had a certain time limit to have all of these things in line, you know, the contractor, the building, the blueprints for the building, the permits, all this had to be in line before they would release the money to us. So we had a meeting with the trustees, and we all went up there and met in the lawyer's office, and the town lawyer went with us to make sure everything was copacetic. And we discussed the building with the trustees, and in the discussion it was, we said that we were having a kitchen put in. One part of the building was going to be the kitchen and the cafe. We intended the cafe to be used for lunches for the seniors. Our intention to start with, and we had got state permission to have a kitchen where we could bring in, like you were going to have potlucks. The cooking would be done, we might have a stove here and we'd have refrigerators and things like that here, but it wouldn't be commercial. We didn't think we needed that. But the trustees said, you're going to have to put in a commercial kitchen. We won't release the money until you do that. Well, there goes another whole aspect of this. We had to look into what a commercial kitchen was, what the utensils would be like, what the specifications for a commercial kitchen were. And that was going to take and revise some of our plans. So the trustees were very, very good. They extended it another 6 months because they had put their stipulations on. They said they would give us another 6 months to comply with their wishes. Well, we did some very fast scrambling. And we came up with a plan that was suitable for the state and met all the specifications. And then we had our contractors, we interviewed them all, and of course we had a certain amount of money, and I sat there and I'm not going to go over that budget. The town won't like me very well if I go over $500,000. So the people came in, the contractors came in, and my Lord, were we appalled. One of them was double what we had thought it would be. Another one was $750,000, nothing less than that. Another one just took a look at the plans and walked out the door. But this other fella wanted to have a big commercial building in his category. He wanted to build one because he's never done it. And he wanted this as a project that he could say, I've done this and completed. And he agreed to build it for the $500,000. So he thought we could come to it very, very well. So we hired him. And with the day they came down and they moved the trailer off. We sold the trailer that was here. And we were all meeting at the town hall. The board was the day that they came and moved the trailer, and we all stand out on the front lawn of the town hall and say, hooray, there goes our trailer. Now we can put up our building. So we did. We had a groundbreaking here, and then they were going to start the building. We discovered, to our amazement, we didn't have one septic system to contend with. We had 3 septic systems on this property to contend with. So there goes the first, well, what do I want to say? Goes the hole in the budget. More expense. But we were still very well and under budget. We were keeping it under control. The building went up, and the day that the guy came down and turned over the check to the select board, we were just so happy. And when the money was put into the town treasury and it was invested, so we got a little bit of interest in it, which helped us with this overrun. And we hired a very, very wonderful clerk of the works, Tom Barden. He kept good track of everything that was going on. And he knew the situation we were in, so he was very agreeable with the price. And it was wonderful to see this start going up. It was. But while the building is going up, you have to think about interiors, furnaces, all the kitchen appliances had to be bought. We did that. Trish and Marianne Gattos and I did all the kitchen things, kitchen appliances, kitchen cabinets. We thought at first we would have it made like a little cafe where they could come in and sit down at a counter and have coffee and muffins. But that, well, eventually didn't pan out. It just was, there wasn't that much interest in that, I guess, because the old brick store had muffins and coffee up there. So anyway, we didn't push it, really. We didn't push it. But we still were in the process of building the building. We heard about a woman that was an interior decorator in Charlotte. I wished I could remember who suggested her. She donated all of her time and her talent and did all the interior decorating, the colors, the drapes. Then she went to a gentleman that lived in town who was a rug carpet man. He gave us all of our carpets, all the tiles in the kitchen at cost. That was just some of the contributions that was made in the initial building of the building. It took us, well, I think we signed him on, now that date does not, I've forgotten the day we signed the contractor on, but we gave him a time limit. He had to have this building open by that fall. And he did. But it was a close call, very, very close call. So we opened it up that fall, 2002. 2002. And that's the story of the initial part. The deadline for receiving the money, first I must tell you, if we did not meet the deadline, the money would go to the Episcopal Church in Burlington. One of the superiors in the Episcopal Church was a member of the trustee fund. So we had to be very, very diligent in everything we did, and we had to make sure that we followed it to the T. We had gotten all the permits and we had everything just about ready. And there was one more stipulation, and I cannot remember what it was. The day before the deadline, so we had a conference call from the select board's office over here in the town hall with a lawyer in Burlington, the trustee funds, and they made one little change in it. And I can remember the board of directors, we said, okay, just a minute. So we went in the other room and we shut the door and we conferred. Yes, we could live with that, we guessed. But it was just some minor little thing. And I know we had to have Robert Mack, as chairman of the select board, had to sign some certain papers. We could not find Robert Mack. Wally Gates found out where he was. He was in the hayfield. And Robert Mack decided he was going to stay in the hayfield. So Wally Gates drives down to the hayfield, walks all across the hayfield with the papers, stops Robert Mack and gets him to sign the papers and brings them back. So that all happened the day before. And we were so happy that night. But there was a lot of these little things, but we had to be very careful. Another term of the will was that the select board or the town had to support the senior center. I think that was one of the reasons why some of the select board were reluctant, because they felt that if they put up a senior center, it was then going to cost them a lot of money. We, as a board of directors, decided that we were going to try to make this building as self-supporting as we could, but they still have to be committed to support this building. We have hired a part-time activities director, and this has built this building up, but the town, she is a town employee. She is the only town employee in this building. Everyone else, everything else is strictly volunteer. We have over the past, with our senior luncheons, we have two, one on Sunday, one on Monday and one on Wednesday. And those have been very, very successful. Our activities are full. In fact, we could use actually more room. But that is something to look forward to in the future. But right now, we're very contented with the building. The zoning board had to approve our plans, which was another process that we went through. They were very agreeable to most everything we had on it because we had worked within their plans. The land we bought was not a big piece of property. And because we needed so much parking space for the size of the building, we had to negotiate with the fire department who owned where our driveway is. And the driveway was needed for the building. If we took it out of our own land, we weren't going to have enough parking space. So we negotiated with them, and we came up with a plan, and they moved their driveway so that we could have parking space out back here for enough cars. We have handicap parking, and of course, being a building that was for the public, it had to be handicap accessible. We ran into a little bit of problem with the front door. It was already installed and it wasn't quite wide enough for a wheelchair. And so the state came down and said we could put a ramp from the parking lot and the walk, up onto the front porch, And we had big double French doors there, and that would serve as our handicap accessible. You have your handicap accessible bathrooms. Everything else is as handicap accessible as we can get it. We do have people coming in with walkers. We've had one or two come in with wheelchairs. It is very, very, even the kitchen is handicap accessible. That was another stipulation that the state government made. If you had a commercial building, you had to have it accessible for somebody in a wheelchair, and washing your hands. That was another thing. Oh, you have a sink that has to be workable for the cooks to wash their hands. We have a commercial gas stove. We have a convection oven, and we have a big freezer and a big refrigerator. Since we have been in works now for a few years, the building has been open, we have changed our designs on our kitchen work shelves. We have made them made them easier for the cooks. We have added more cupboards into the kitchen. Those things have been taken place. The building is designed to fit into Charlotte's center, which is basically old farmhouses and farm barns. The great room is called the barn. We had a little controversy when we were drawing up the plans. I wanted a cupola on it. They didn't think we needed a cupola. I says, the town hall has a cupola, our barn needs a cupola. So we did put the cupola. Now, the shortest section is the farmhouse. It is designed to look like a farmhouse, and it has a front porch on it. And then we got into painting it. The zoning board wanted us to paint it white because all the other houses in the town are painted white. All along Greenbush Road are white. But we were a little hesitant about painting it white. Trish and I made an appointment to visit Shelburne Museum. And this is designed like a farmhouse that's in the late 1800s. So we went up to the Shelburne Museum and talked with the curator up there. And we went through all kinds of paints. And he said in those days, it was painted, this shade of red. They had used it on their barns up there. Then we decided the house had to be we didn't want the house painted red. So we painted it a gray. He was the one that told the shades of it. It wasn't just any barnhouse red. It was just had to be a certain shade. So he had told us what color they called it and what they did. So we went back to the zoning board, and yes, they agreed that was not disagreeable with the town. And so they consented to have us paint it the colors. It's now a barn red and a gray on the farmhouse. A year after we had started it, we had originally designed to have a deck out front. Another stipulation by the zoning board, we could not have a step off the front deck because that would mean people could park in front of it on the road and walk up the step and onto the deck and in. They did not want that. In fact, they even wanted us to put a sidewalk along the driveway. But we haven't found it necessary to put one in yet. But anyway, they said we couldn't do that deck and have a step on it. So we decided, all right, we'll go along with them. So the senior center board of directors had a campaign to raise a little bit of money. And we went ahead and with volunteer help, we put a deck on the front of it. Now this was done after the building was open. We had quite a discussion what we were going to put out there. The money was all donated for the deck by one family. And they agreed that I had been to Yellowstone National Park with my son, and they have out there this material that they use on all their walks that is made out of Tide plastic bottles, and it is lifetime guaranteed, and doesn't rot. It is beautiful, beautiful. So we agreed to put that up, and the people that were going to pay for the deck agreed that that was all right with them. So we went ahead and put up our deck. Then we went and bought some Vermont-made porch furniture, table and chairs, and have an umbrella on the tables. And it's surprising, Wednesdays when we have overflows, people go out on the deck. And it is very enjoyable. Also, then came landscaping. You can't have a building and not have it landscaped. Here again, volunteers came forward. The volunteers came ahead, and there was a group of ladies. We don't have a garden club here in Charlotte, but these group of ladies got together, and they worked out all the landscaping that was to be done. The landscaping was really quite a project. And these ladies had hours and hours. They sat together and decided what they were going to put around the building and how they were going to plant it. A lot of the shrubs were donated, and we have several memorial trees. In the center of our parking lot, there is a round mound. The original landscaping design had called for, and that was another thing that had to be approved by the zoning board. There was quite a little bit of controversy about what we would plant here. They wanted us to plant 3 huge trees in the middle of the parking lot. But the rest of us ladies that were on that committee and didn't approve or didn't decide couldn't consider what they were saying. It was too much. And one family wanted to donate a tree. It was a weeping cherry tree in honor of their parents, which was ideal for the center of that lot. So we put it in out there. And then our town tree warden came down and said, "You're not supposed to put that there." But we said it was donated in memory of a family, and so he agreed to let it stand. We have had one tree donated in honor of a lady that lived on Greenbush Road. We've had a few other ones, but we had to plant some trees. One of our trees had to come down. We had to have a hedge on the back of the building to shield the building from the neighbor. He was quite adamant about that. So that wasn't something but what we could do. And the Horsford's Nursery came up and put up a very nice cedar hedge. It is now grown, and it's very, very nice. We had to camouflage our air conditioning unit. It was another thing we had decided when we put this building up, we were going to have it air conditioned. Also, another big asset to this building is we have a heating in the floor, radiant heat. This has been one of the best advantages to this building because the temperature is very even. And I don't think there's another building that has radiant heating. It didn't at the time. We were quite innovative in putting up the building, but it has turned out to be very, very nice and has affected the building very much. When we were having our campaign to raise money, we had the sketch all, the blueprints all drawn up, but we needed to have something to show the town and to show the people at town meeting day. So we got Jenny Cole, who is a resident here in Charlotte, to draw and make a model of the senior center. And we had it on display in the town hall. We had it at the town meeting and all these other meetings that we could go to show the people what the building was going to be like. And it has been it was pretty effective because we raised the money. Also, these people, we have rooms in the senior center that are donated by people that gave us a lot of money or donated, and so they bought a room, is what I want to say. The front porch was paid for by a family. Another room was paid for by a donation from a family. So this was another way that we got it. And to be truthful, we only went over our budget by $5,000. And that was my mistake. I forgot I still owed the clerk of the works $5,000. In addition to the senior activities, this building is used for many other town activities. We do rent it out. We've had a wedding here. We've had birthday parties here. We have the Charlotte Historical Society meets here. Sustainable Living meets here. And we have a great many speakers come in, especially after our luncheons. We have speakers come in. Also, we have used it for fundraising, like Bob Chutter and his friends went up to Canada on a beautiful trip, and we filled the hall with people when they told us about their adventures up there, and Bob losing his camera in the river. Also, he had to wear a little thing on his hat because the guy behind him wasn't always sure where his canoe was going. But it was a lot of fun. We have also have a musical. One first Friday, I think, of every month, we have musical groups that come in here. They fill up the great room. I cannot think of all the activities. There's so many of them going on. Our calendars is made up on a 3-month schedule, and those are just filled full. Just recently, one of our groups, the Charlotte Knitters, we had a lot of yarn given to us, donated to us. Mary Volk and Carly Kralik and got together and we put up kits and we all got busy knitting. And we knitted hats, sweaters for the Lundholm babies. Also, people began to come in with Afghans. Aunt Barb has yarn donated to her. She made 3 baby Afghans and donated them to that. We had this hall just lined up with tables and full of baby hats and sweaters. And we got recognized by the United Way as a volunteer group. And we were nominated for an award. But we didn't get it, but we were nominated, and that was important, very important for the senior center. And that was just another little feather in our hat. Debbie Salmon came down to see our kitchen one day when we were having lunch here. And she was very impressed with it, and she wrote up a column and put it in the Free Press. And so I'm telling you, Warren, Walter and Gertrude Irish would be very, very pleased if they could see the extent. We have artisans every month, a different artist every month displays their work here. It is amazing what talent you can find if you just look around you. In the fall of the year, we have an artisan sale just weekend before Thanksgiving. And I come in amazed at what the people, a lot of them, most of them are from the town of Charlotte, what talent we have here, the things that they do, pottery, glass blowing. One gentleman makes these most beautiful pens, and they were on the Oprah show one year. That's a fellow from Charlotte. Candy making. Another big event. Oh, I mustn't forget this. Ethel Atkins Fudge. Ethel Atkins was a member of Charlotte, and she would make 400 pieces of fudge every Halloween. And then she would sit on her front porch and give out these pieces of fudge. So we decided to participate in the town Halloween. And we decided that we would take Ethel's fudge recipe and we would make peanut butter fudge, and we would open our doors on Halloween. The firehouse opens theirs, and people come from all over. And we have a day when a lot of people volunteer to make pans of fudge. And then before Halloween, we have an afternoon after lunch. Everybody cuts up fudge and puts fudge in packages. We make popcorn balls, and we get ready for our Halloween. And this is another, I think, tradition that will be carried on for years to come. Walter Irish and his wife lived in Mutton Hill. They moved, I can't tell you the year they moved here, but he had worked for Berlin Free Press all his life. They owned the Star Motel on Shelburne Road, Route 7 for years, and then when Howard Johnson came in to build a big hotel there, they sold it to Howard Johnson and moved to Charlotte. They had no children, and they were conservative people, very conservative. No one had any idea that they had assumed or accrued that much money. We had no idea. He lived up there, and he watched Susie Tremblay and another lady up there were housebound a lot. And he was very concerned that senior citizens had no place to go. He decided that we needed a senior citizen place here, but he didn't tell anybody. Now, my Aunt Barb and her husband, Warren, used to cart him around because he had no car. They had no transportation. So they'd take, Aunt Barb and Warren would take him to Rutland. Several times he went to Rutland to see their senior center down there. He liked the way the building was built. He kept talking about it. There was a piece of property up on Mutton Hill that was for sale. And Walter started to inquire about it. And then, as towns will go, rumor got around that Walter Irish was looking at this property. And immediately, Walter Irish stopped talking about a senior center in Charlotte. He did not want anyone to know he was interested. So it just dropped. The town, the gossip just disappeared. So when Walter Irish died and his will was probated, there was a fellow in town that ran a little clip paper that said, Walter Irish has left $500,000 to the town to build a senior center. And everybody was shocked. We were really overwhelmed. We did have a senior group that met at the Congregational Church every Wednesday for lunch. We would have bingos. Maybe we would play cards. We had lunch. It came from Burlington High School, where they cooked for the high school. CVAA would bring or somebody would go and get the lunches and bring them down. Charlie Lotz was a big advocate for that. He would go up and get them and bring them to us. And they were prepared up there, and they came already cooked. Every fall, we organized fall foliage tours, and we would get a Pigeon's bus from up in the middle of the state. It was reasonable in those days. And then we would get people to give us $5 to help pay for the bus, and then I would arrange where the bus was going to go, where we were going to stop to have coffee and muffins, where we were going to have lunch, what we were going to do for entertainment. And it was a whole day trip. And we would load the bus up with 45 seniors. And away we would go. We did that every fall. That was our one big thing, but it was a lot of fun. Now, when the senior center was built down here, and it really was the instigation of Walter Irish, that he wanted a place where the seniors could go and be together and not have to sit alone in their houses, was the way he put it to Aunt Barb. He didn't like the idea that they had to be alone in their houses. So we transferred all of the doings of the old senior group down here. The only thing we haven't done is take fall foliage tours, but we have a lot of other activities instead, like boat trips in the summer, which we would have never thought of before. But anyway, this was one of the ways that it came about. And Walter Irish, Aunt Barb were very friends with him, but he had gone in to the Episcopal Church in Burlington after his wife died, and he talked with the bishop and said, I have $500,000. Will you build a senior center in the Episcopal building? And the bishop said no. He would use the money to redecorate the bishop's house. Walter went down to his lawyer the next week and spent hours with them, coming up with the plans and the terms to have a senior center built in Charlotte. And to see it come to fruition, to see it being used, is absolutely a dream, and one I'm proud to have a part of.